The alarm clock is not just noise. It's the brain's first signal to initiate a biological chain reaction that determines who you will be that day. When you hit snooze, you're not merely delaying an action, you're delaying your entire behavioral nervous system, specifically the caudate nucleus responsible for motivation and habit is being reprogrammed toward avoidance instead of action. You may think you're just sleeping 5 more minutes, but in reality, you're teaching your brain that the promise you made to yourself last night holds no weight this morning. And so with each simple delay, you quietly destroy the trust within. The human brain operates on the principle of circadian rhythm, and cortisol is the hormone that wakes your body to prepare for action each morning. When you open your eyes and get up right as the alarm rings, you trigger alertness and increase dopamine release in the forward drive direction. Conversely, every time you toss and turn, you suppress baseline dopamine release, the very fuel you need for motivation, focus, and resilience. You're not just delaying an action, you're postponing the brain's optimal operating state. People ask me why getting up on time matters so much, because it's the moment you teach yourself that feeling does not control action. Your brain is always manufacturing reasons to delay because your ventromedial prefrontal cortex becomes overactive when you're sleepy, making you misjudge the importance of taking action. If you let tiredness dictate your decision, you reinforce neural networks that rely on emotion over behavior. This isn't a philosophy, this is behavioral neuroscience. You think 5 more minutes doesn't matter? But that's precisely what teaches your brain that discipline is negotiable. And let me tell you clearly, everything you fail at in life begins with those tiny negotiations. Every time you hit snooze, you generate a quiet chain of signals in your hippocampus and basal ganglia, the regions that store habits and reinforce behaviors. You're not postponing once, you are encoding delay as a neural lifestyle. You may not believe it, but whether you get up on time impacts your decision-making throughout the day. A Stanford study showed that people who consistently get up on time make decisions faster, with less regret, and exhibit stronger activation in the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that governs planning and goal-oriented behavior. Meanwhile, habitual delayers show heightened activation in the limbic system, the brain's emotional and defensive center. Now think beyond that. If you can't overcome the first laziness of the day, do you really believe you can stick to a long-term plan? If you let small habits defeat you, how will you resist bigger temptations? Every action sends a message to your entire nervous system about your direction. No behavior is small because the nervous system doesn't distinguish between big and small actions. It only remembers what you repeat. Waking up on time isn't some military-style discipline, as you might imagine. It's how you reset the hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal, HPA axis, helping your body release the right amount of cortisol at the right time, reducing anxiety, increasing light sensitivity during the day, and improving sleep at night. In other words, you sleep better, not because you sleep more, but because you wake up at the right time. I want you to hear this clearly. No one controls you at 6 a.m. except yourself. No boss, no deadlines, no audience, just you and one decision: get up or delay. And that choice reflects your level of self-control, self-respect, and future direction. Don't say you have big goals if you can't even get up on time, because if you can't keep your smallest promise to yourself, you will never keep your bigger promises in life. The habit of getting up when the alarm rings doesn't just change your behavior, it changes your brain structure. Through a process called behavior-directed neuroplasticity, you can rewire your neural network by repeating the right behavior at the right time daily. When you do this long enough, you no longer fight with willpower. The behavior becomes identity, and identity becomes capacity. The difference between someone who says, "I want to change," and someone who actually changes begins the moment the alarm rings. You don't need a speech, a book, or a miracle. You just need to place your feet on the floor on time and get up. Simple. No more excuses, no need for emotional permission, just act. Don't misuse the phrase self-love if you're constantly damaging your nervous system with delay. Loving yourself doesn't mean letting yourself sleep more. Loving yourself means teaching yourself to be trustworthy in your own eyes. You can start over tomorrow morning. There's nothing romantic about it. Just one sharp decision. When the alarm rings, get up. And if you do it for 66 days straight, based on the neuroscience of habit formation, proven in multiple studies, you're not just building a habit, you're rebuilding belief. So tomorrow morning, when you hear that sound, remember, you're not just getting out of bed, you're getting out of stagnation. You're not just rising from a mattress, you're rising from your old self. And you're starting the day as someone I believe you can be, a person who controls themselves, starting from the smallest action. And that, not motivation, is the true beginning of all real change. One of the most common mistakes your nervous system is making is scattering energy across too many goals at once. Your brain is not the multitasking computer you think it is. Biologically, your brain's focus system, especially the central executive network, can only maintain peak clarity when it's directed at a single goal. Every time you divide your attention across multiple directions, you're not progressing. You're leaking cognitive energy and damaging your capacity for deep focus, the very thing that determines success or failure in any serious pursuit. You're not tired because you work too much. You're tired because you're burning thousands of units of neural energy on half decisions, unclear goals, and things that seem important but are really just noise. Every unresolved decision becomes a burden on the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for executive function and decision-making. And when you start your morning with 5 unclassified goals, you've already depleted most of your dopamine and neuroglucose just trying to pick a direction without having taken a single step. Under the neurological microscope, lack of focus isn't a character flaw, it's a signal disruption. If your brain doesn't know how to prioritize, it doesn't know how to ignore either. Every goal you feed it as an open loop activates the amygdala, the stress center, placing you in a state of chronic, ambiguous alertness. You don't know why you feel anxious, restless, or uneasy, but it's because you're carrying too many goals without committing to any of them fully. This is why the most effective people often seem to do less than you'd expect. They pick one goal and lock their entire energy into it. They understand the principle of neural energy regulation. The more noise, the less efficiency. In modern behavioral neuroscience, the idea of unimodal focus isn't some romantic notion of minimalism. It's a mechanism that boosts activity in the frontal lobe, particularly the anterior cingulate cortex, ACC, responsible for filtering distractions and sustaining effort. You don't lack motivation, you lack structure. And structure begins with one clear decision. What's the most important thing right now? It's a simple question, but if you can't answer it, you'll live in a reactive state instead of an intentional one. Every day without a clearly chosen goal is a day your brain enters a conflict of priorities. I'm not telling you this, not to make you feel bad, but so you can start again with a new commitment. One single goal and total dedication to it. Because when you choose one goal, you're not just simplifying your calendar. You're simplifying how your brain organizes neural signals. You enable what's known as the dopamine prediction error, where the brain gets rewarded precisely for progress on a clear objective. That's the neurological basis of long-term motivation. Everything else is just the illusion of busyness. People often ask me, I have many passions. Should I pursue them all at once? The answer is no. Not if you want results. Each passion is a separate neural direction. If you divide yourself too early, you'll become mediocre at everything. Before you earn the right to multitask, you must prove you can single task with excellence. Commitment isn't a feeling, it's a repeated decision regardless of how your feelings change. When you choose one goal, you will face boring days, directionless days, days without visible progress. That's when the brain's slow response system starts working, when you no longer rely on excitement, but on the neural structure you've embedded, and it's precisely at that point that real results begin to emerge. If you keep jumping from goal to goal, you're destroying your brain's ability to accumulate neural signals. Habit and skill formation in the brain depends on a principle called long-term potentiation. Every time you quit halfway, you break that accumulation chain and you start from zero with a new behavior. The result, you always feel busy, but nothing moves forward. I'm not here to tell you that you can only have one dream. I'm here to show you that your brain can't serve two masters at the same time. If you're truly serious about something, you'll cut everything else out, at least for a season. That's how you turn behavior into identity, not through inspiration, but through single direction movement. And I want you to know this, choosing one goal doesn't mean ignoring every other opportunity. It means you understand the mechanics of progress. When you become excellent in one domain, countless paths will open up later. But if you skim over everything, you'll never go deep into anything. And without depth, there is no credibility, no result, no self-respect. So right now, identify what, if completed, would most profoundly change your life. Not what's easy, not what others expect, not what's trending, but what truly matters to you. And once you find it, act as if it's the only thing on your calendar every single day. Don't try to manage time. Start by eliminating noise. Your brain doesn't lack time. It simply refuses to work seriously when you constantly give it reasons to be distracted. And every time you choose a clear direction, you're building the most valuable trait an adult can possess, a mind with intention. Success doesn't come from how much you do. It comes from doing the right thing long enough, deep enough, without being pulled away every time your dopamine shifts. And I believe you're smart enough to understand that. The only question left is, do you have the discipline to choose and hold that choice until results come? If you do, you'll never have to ask why your life started to change. You'll know because you'll be living like someone who knows exactly what they're doing and why they're doing it. The way you stand is actively rewriting how your brain evaluates you. This is not a metaphor or a hollow self-help cliche. Neurologically, your body posture feeds back into the limbic system, the part of your brain that regulates emotions, social behavior, and self-evaluation. If you constantly hunch your shoulders, lower your head, take small steps, and avoid eye contact, you're not just broadcasting a signal of, I don't matter to the outside world, you're making your brain believe it's true. Specifically, every collapsed posture increases amygdala activity, the brain's danger detection center, and weakens the prefrontal cortex, responsible for self-control and positive emotions. What does this mean? That when you slouch, shrink back, or withdraw from space, you're not merely tired, you're sending hundreds of subtle signals that make you feel weak, insignificant, and vulnerable. Each time this happens, your motor cortex, the region responsible for action and initiative, contracts its activity. Over time, you don't just lose your strong appearance, you lose your behavioral trust in yourself. And then you wonder why you lack confidence, motivation, and vitality, when in fact you are the one reprogramming your brain toward retreat. Understand this, the body doesn't just reflect emotion, it reconstructs emotion. Biologically, this is called the interceptive feedback loop. It means that every posture you maintain doesn't just express emotional state, it creates it. You hunch because you feel small, and the more you hunch, the smaller you become within your own nervous system. But if you walk upright, raise your chin, take decisive strides, and open your chest, you activate the sympathetic nervous system's fight response, but not in a stressful way. On the contrary, it creates alertness, confidence, and readiness. In studies on power posing, simply standing tall for 2 minutes slightly raises testosterone and significantly lowers cortisol, the stress hormone. Your body doesn't know whether you're pretending or genuine. It simply reacts to your posture. You might think you need to change your mindset to act better. In reality, sometimes you just need to change your shape in space. When you shift your physical position, you access different levels of behavioral coordination in the brain. Good posture isn't about impressing others. Good posture is about reclaiming the biological control of your internal state. Pay attention to those moments when you're tired, discouraged, or about to quit. Almost always, your body posture is retracting, curling up, folding in, as if trying to disappear. But when you choose to stand tall, plant your feet firmly, open your shoulders, and look straight ahead, you send a direct signal to your nervous system, I'm ready. Even if your mood hasn't shifted, you've triggered the physiological conditions for it to change. And from there, the neurochemical cascade follows. I don't need you to fake it. I need you to start behaving as someone with worth. Even if you don't yet feel that way, behavior precedes emotion. The body leads. If you wait to feel confident before you walk tall, you'll wait forever. The brain doesn't work by feeling then doing. It learns through repeated behaviors, through synaptic reconnection. Act as if you are worthy long enough, and your nervous system will update its internal value. I once told a friend, don't wait for others to respect you. Teach your body to respect you first. The way you enter a room, sit down, hold a pen, plant your feet. These are signals, not just to others, but to your brain. Every unconscious movement is a vote about self-worth. Are you voting for strength or invisibility? And this isn't just motivational theory. This is how elite soldiers are trained, through control of posture, breathing, gaze, and physical presence. Because in high-stress situations where emotions are volatile, posture is the final biological anchor that preserves discipline and performance. You don't need to live like a special forces operative. You need to understand the way you walk into the world each day is redesigning your inner identity bit by bit. How do you sit when you work? Are your shoulders hunched? Is your chin tilted down? Is your spine collapsing forward as if burdened by something invisible? If so, fix it immediately, not for appearance's sake, but for neurological function. The spine is the central axis of the nervous system. When you let it collapse, you disrupt the upward flow of sensory signals, especially from the brainstem to the parietal lobe. The result, you think less clearly, feel less motivated, and don't understand why. Presence begins with how you occupy space. When you tuck yourself into a corner as if apologizing for your existence, others also perceive you as someone unworthy of attention. But when you sit firmly, quietly, with a steady gaze and an open posture, you don't need to say a word. People will adjust their energy to match yours. More importantly, your brain will adjust its identity to match you. So no, I don't need you to transform your life today. I need you to straighten your back, walk with intention, sit solidly, open your shoulders, look straight ahead, not for others, for you, so that you feel the presence of yourself stronger than all the vague doubts inside. Because only when your body chooses center will your brain stop running away. Posture is the first language you ever learned, even before words, and it remains the one your brain trusts most when evaluating self-worth. So let the world and yourself know you've returned, not through words, but through the way you walk, stand, sit, and live. No one taught you this in school, but this will decide whether you are heard, whether you are respected, and most importantly, whether you have the inner strength to keep going, even when no one believes in you but yourself. When you speak, you are shaping not only how others respond to you, but more importantly, how your own nervous system responds to you. The voice is not merely a tool for communication. It is a mechanism that reflects the clarity of your internal signal. Someone who often speaks softly, hesitantly, or stutters is not necessarily lacking communication skills. They are operating from a neurologically suppressed state, often due to overactivity in the amygdala and a lack of effective connectivity between the prefrontal cortex and the Broca's speech center. You don't speak with low confidence because you are weak, but because the neural network that transmits your thoughts isn't being organized properly due to lack of training and intentional control. Every time you speak too fast, skim over ideas, or use a thin, weak voice, you're not only diminishing the effectiveness of your message, you're also weakening the level of credibility your brain assigns to your own voice. Because according to the principle of the neurofeedback loop, when you hear your own voice ring out clearly and decisively, your body adjusts its biological state towards stability. The parasympathetic nervous system is activated, creating a sense of control and grounded action. Conversely, when you speak without conviction, even to yourself, you trigger the fight or flight reflex, and with it, lose your sense of initiative. This is why I often warn, if you do not own your voice, you will always have to borrow influence from others. And your nervous system, which is deeply sensitive to tone and rhythm, will constantly feel that you are in a lower position in every social interaction, even if no one says it out loud. This has been confirmed in studies on voice frequency and persuasion. A deep voice, moderate pace, and strategic emphasis lead listeners to perceive a trustworthy signal, regardless of the actual content. Imagine walking into a meeting and starting with a trembling voice, ending with, "I'm not really sure," or "probably." The listener's brain will immediately categorize you as unclear, unstable, and they will stop listening on a deeper level. But if the same information is delivered in an even, slightly lower, coherent, and clear tone, the listener's cortex becomes more active in the regions that process meaningful information, and your words are received as actionable signal. Your voice, not the content, is what determines whether your message is absorbed or ignored. More importantly, if you continue speaking in a timid, ambiguous manner, you are training your own nervous system to live in a state of asking for permission to exist. And with each instance, your self-esteem erodes a little more. The real question isn't whether you have something to say, but whether you dare to stand firm in your words. And that begins with how you control pace, breathing, and emphasis. A deliberate voice is the result of prefrontal cortex coordination with the motor systems of the mouth, but it is also the product of willpower. You can start with something simple. Slow down. Most people who don't speak clearly don't suffer from a lack of vocabulary. They speak quickly to avoid eye contact, to get it over with, or because they don't dare to take up space with their words. But if you understand that every sentence is a chance to shape your personal image, you won't speak just to get through. You will speak to build presence. And you'll begin to speak with pauses, clarity, and full presence. Stop interrupting yourself with filler words like kind of like, I'm not sure, but the listener's brain is highly sensitive to these stumbles as they signal that your expressive nervous system is not grounded. If you're unsure, pause, breathe deeply, then speak concisely and distinctly. This significantly increases trust in high-pressure communication environments such as team meetings, negotiations, and interviews. And more importantly, you will feel your own nervous system beginning to recalibrate. You step out of linguistic chaos and into a domain of deliberate action. Science calls this phenomenon entrainment, when your voice creates a neural rhythm, not only in the listener's brain, but in your own. Every clear sound you utter becomes a rhythmic signal, helping your nervous system find balance between activation and inhibition. You enter a flow state not because you speak eloquently, but because you have mastered your own signaling system through breath and pacing. And the best part, this is a trainable skill built through behavior, not talent. If you've been silent too long, if you've had your voice stolen, if you've been afraid to speak your truth, know that you are not weak. Your nervous system has merely been conditioned by survival reflexes. But like all neural habits, it can be restructured. By choosing each day to speak a little slower, a little clearer, and to be fully present in every sentence, you are retraining your entire expressive system. You're not just delivering ideas. You are reteaching your brain, I deserve to be heard. And one last thing, don't apologize for your voice. Don't diminish it. Don't end your sentences with ellipses and seeking eyes. If you have something important to say it with your full presence. You don't need to shout. You just need to speak as though your words carry weight, because they do, to others and to yourself. Your voice is the most powerful neurological tool you possess for influence, for leadership, and for self-regulation. Use it as an instrument, not as a faint echo. Train it as you would a muscle. Each clear sentence, each time you dare to slow down, each moment you look someone in the eye and finish your thought is a behavioral act of rebuilding identity. You don't need to wait until you're confident to speak strongly. You speak strongly to build confidence, and from that place you enter life fully, not just with your body, but with a clear signal that originates from your own voice. Every time you're afraid to say no, you are allowing others to rewrite the structure of your time, energy, and nervous system, and you mistake that for kindness. But biologically, it's a disintegration of your identity. Every time you nod just to avoid rejection, you are training your prefrontal cortex to misassociate personal value with external approval. You're not just losing an evening, an hour of deep work, or a growth opportunity. You're weakening your ability to discern what truly matters to you and what's merely social noise. Your nervous system was never designed to say yes to everything. It operates best within boundaries. A specific number of relationships, a limited amount of information, a clear objective. Every time you take on another invitation, another message to respond to, another just 30 minutes meetup, you are overstimulating your limbic system, increasing cortisol, misdirecting dopamine, and pushing your brain from creation mode into coping mode. You think you're being efficient, but in truth, you are living reactively, not intentionally. Saying no is not an act of rebellion, it is an act of neurological self-preservation. A study at Harvard shows people who can say no early, clearly, and without guilt have thicker cortical areas in the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for strategic behavior. They make faster decisions, experience less regret, and most importantly, are less prone to emotional burnout, not because they're cold, but because they understand that neural energy is not infinite. It must be distributed wisely. If you don't protect your time, others will consume it for their needs. And here's the brutal truth. The world has no obligation to shield you from overload. That responsibility is yours. Every yes uttered out of awkwardness, guilt, or fear of upsetting others is a decision your nervous system will pay for. You can be polite, kind, and graceful and still say no. The issue isn't the refusal. It's how you define yourself. Are you someone who lives by direction or someone who lives to make others comfortable? Understand this. You are functioning in a society built on neural overload. Every app, every invite, every collaboration opportunity is designed to look irresistible. But you need a filter stronger than feelings. You need a filter rooted in neurological priority structures. Ask yourself, does this contribute to my long-term goals? Does it need to happen now? Can it be delegated? If the answer is unclear, then the answer should be no. One of the most important neurological skills you can train is making firm decisions quickly without lengthy justification. Because every time you delay a rejection, you leave your nervous system in ambiguity, where cortisol hums quietly and you feel restless even before doing anything. Say no as a form of mental hygiene. Fast, polite, clear, no apologies, no explanations. You don't owe anyone a rationale for how you spend your time except yourself. You think you need to be present at every meeting, every conversation, every group chat? Let me be clear, not all requests carry equal value, and not all people deserve access to your energy at all times. If you keep your nervous system's gates open 24/7, you're no longer a person, you're a public access point. And from there, you start losing strategic thinking, losing circadian rhythm control, and slipping into paralysis from micro overload. Notice this, the most impactful people are rarely those who show up everywhere. They show up at the right time with full energy because they know how to detach from noise. They don't check messages obsessively. They don't say yes to every coffee invitation. They understand the biological principle. Creativity and decision-making arise from wimpless. Every refusal is a silent nod to that waste. But I'm not asking you to be selfish. I'm asking you to understand this. If you don't control who gets access to your time, then all your growth plans are just theory, because you're living inside someone else's nervous system. And don't confuse being kind with being directionless. Truly kind people cannot do good if they are exhausted, fragmented, and cornered into endless non-essential commitments. People of value know how to protect the space where their value is nurtured. You have the right to turn off notifications. You have the right not to respond immediately. You have the right to decline an invitation without guilt. You have the right to choose what serves your long-term self without needing anyone's permission. And if someone cannot understand that, they likely care more about themselves than about you. Let how you manage your time be a mirror of how you manage your identity. Clear, firm, selective. And let me make one thing clear. If you don't choose what's worth your time, someone else will choose for you. They'll choose through pointless conversations, aimless invitations, urgent matters that are only urgent to them. And you'll live every day feeling busy but going nowhere. That's the most intelligent neural trap modern society has built, keeping you perpetually busy but never truly alive. Saying no doesn't make you a bad person. Saying no makes you someone with direction. And if you want to build a life worth living, start where you draw the line, because boundaries aren't walls. Boundaries are structures that prevent your nervous system from disintegrating under hundreds of knocking demands, and only you, can build that structure with one simple word: no. When your eyes constantly shift away during a conversation, the other person's brain doesn't need detailed data to conclude you're not confident. And worse, your own nervous system registers that too. Your eyes are not just a tool to observe the environment. They are the deepest channel of communication between people and between you and yourself. From a neurological perspective, a few seconds of direct eye contact is enough to activate the ventral striatum, an area related to reward, social bonding, and a sense of value. But when you avoid eye contact, you unconsciously send inhibitory signals to both your prefrontal cortex and your circadian regulation systems. The result? Disconnection, absence, the loss of a stable signal of presence. We are not taught this in school. No one teaches you that your eyes are a declaration of identity, but you feel it. You've felt the weight of a steady gaze. You've felt the awkwardness in front of someone who is fully present. And you've also known the emptiness when facing a vague, evasive gaze. That's because the eyes are not just physical behavior. They are a neural window into your internal state, a kind of spiritual fingerprint transmitted instantly. When you avoid looking directly at someone, especially in important moments, meetings, presentations, deep conversations, you are sending a signal of instability. But not only do they notice, your nervous system also registers, I am not in control of this situation. And so begins a negative feedback loop. You feel less confident and your eyes avoid even more. That loop doesn't happen because you're weak. It happens because your nervous system hasn't been trained to stay present. Understand this. The eyes are the anchor point of the social nervous system. When you hold eye contact, not with tension, but with stability and rhythm, you activate neural synchronization between yourself and the other person. This isn't theory. This is EEG and fMRI data showing that when two people maintain eye contact, their brainwave activity tends to phase lock, a form of biological alignment that increases trust, information retention, and the transmission of positive emotion. You don't need to have the posture of a leader, but you must train your eyes to stop asking for permission, because within your gaze, you are sending a message, I am here. And no shouting, no long speeches needed. A gaze that holds steady for 3 to 5 seconds in a crowd can be more powerful than a speech, because the human brain is wired to respond strongly to signals from the eyes faster than to speech or gestures. A firm gaze lowers activity in the other person's amygdala. They feel safer. They trust you more. If you've ever thought of yourself as shy, introverted, or bad at eye contact, I want you to see the truth through the lens of biology. No human is born to avoid eye contact. Only nervous systems trained to defend themselves. But that can be reprogrammed. How? By consciously practicing steady eye contact every day. When you speak to a cashier, look directly and smile. When you thank someone, hold your gaze a beat longer. When you walk into a room, let your eyes arrive first, steady, slow, and unapologetic. You're not training yourself to stare longer. You're training your ability to stay present without trembling. And that's the trait that makes people listen to you even before you say anything, because your gaze is the first test of biological authority. The more neurologically regulated a person is, the more clearly they can hold their gaze. The more unsettled a person is, the faster they blink, the more they dart their eyes or lower their head to avoid. And the social nervous system of the person across from you, honed over millions of years of evolution, detects that difference in a tenth of a second. You cannot say you're confident if your eyes keep apologizing. You cannot pretend to be present if your gaze is still searching for escape. And you don't need to try to prove anything. You just need to stay. Stay in the gaze. Stay in the moment. Stay even when it feels empty, when you have nothing to say, or when you feel watched. That staying in silence and wholeness is where confidence is built, not through words, but through connection. Psychological studies show maintaining eye contact during conversation improves memory retention, increases likability scores in interviews, and helps you leave a stronger emotional impression in others' memory. This means your gaze doesn't just create a first impression, it leaves a lingering resonance. It makes people feel you in a way they cannot explain. It's something you can't buy, can't outsource, only train. Starting today, stop glancing away. When you speak, look. When you listen, hold the gaze. No force, no stiffness. Just let your eyes remain calm, complete, and not eager to flee, because that gaze is the first bridge, not just to others, but to the deepest part of your nervous system. And if you ask, how do I become more confident? I won't tell you to learn a new skill. I'll tell you, look straight and don't run, because when you hold your gaze, you hold yourself. And from that place, confidence is not something you say. Confidence is something others feel the moment they look into your eyes. Every time you unconsciously reach for your phone, you're handing over control of your nervous system to a system designed to hijack your attention. You're not opening your phone because you need it. You're opening it because your brain, specifically the dopaminergic system and the mesolimbic pathway, is being rewired to seek short-term rewards. You think you're catching up on the news, slightly entertaining yourself, or just unwinding a bit. But in reality, you're feeding your brain a stream of disjointed signals that fragment your ability to focus, erode your creativity, and continuously push back the most important task you need to do that day. This isn't a feeling, it's biology. Each time you scroll, swipe, or watch a short clip, you trigger a dopamine hit, a small wave of excitement that makes you feel like something's moving. But in truth, nothing is progressing. The problem is the brain doesn't distinguish between real rewards and artificial ones. It only registers, oh, I just achieved something easily. And so you gradually lose your ability to do deep work, lose the patience to start, and slowly dismantle your intrinsic motivational system, the one that sustains neurological energy for long-haul tasks. The more you repeat this behavior loop, the more you weaken your prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for executive function, decision-making, and delayed gratification. You further empower the caudate nucleus, the center of unconscious habits. Your nervous system gradually shifts from a state of intentional control to one of reflex. You no longer choose to check your phone. You're simply pulled toward it like an involuntary response. And then you wonder why you can't focus, why ideas won't come, why you start the day with a clear intention but end it feeling lost. It's simple. You don't lack time. You lack neurological space, the one essential element you need to create anything of value. And that space cannot exist when you live in a constant stream of stimulation created by your phone. You don't need to eliminate technology. You need to reclaim your governance over it. Let's face it, every app you use is optimized to keep you there as long as possible. To do that, it must distract your neurological control systems through color, sound, notification volume, and cleverly programmed dopamine rhythms. When you let yourself get pulled into that, you're not just entertaining yourself, you're letting someone else operate your nervous system on their schedule. The scary part isn't that you lose 2 hours a day scrolling. The scary part is that you lose the ability to work in silence, in depth, in the solitude necessary to create something truly meaningful. You cannot be creative while constantly responding to notifications. You cannot build a focused project if your brain is conditioned to switch topics every 15 seconds. And this doesn't just affect your work, it affects your neurological identity. You become someone who can't stay long with anything, but you can change direction. And the first step isn't to use your phone less, but to build safe zones for focus. Leave your phone in another room. Turn off non-essential notifications. Set app time limits. Designate no phone hours, 2 hours each morning and 2 hours each evening, where your nervous system can reset to its natural rhythm. What will you notice? At first, restlessness, a sense of lack, your hand unconsciously reaching for your phone. That's the symptom of having lived too long in constant stimulation. But if you persist, within 7-10 days, you'll start to feel silence returning. And it's in that silence that your nervous system begins to function as it's meant to. Building long-term ideas, analyzing deeply, finding connections between pieces of information, things no app can do for you. This is the state that scientists call deep cognition, a state of thoughtful processing that requires time, uninterrupted space, and is an essential condition for producing meaningful value. You don't need to be a monk to practice this. You just need to begin with one small decision. Place your phone face down. Stay away from it for 60 minutes a day. Don't check messages while working. Close all unrelated tabs. And most importantly, retrain your ability to sit still and do just one thing. It sounds simple, but in today's dopamine overloaded world, this is an act of rebellion. Remember, what makes you feel busy isn't the work. It's the neurological fragmentation caused by switching tasks too often. Every time you switch tasks, check messages, or glance at a notification, you lose an average of 15-20 minutes trying to regain deep focus. Multiply that by 10 times a day, and you've lost nearly half your day not working, but just recovering yourself. I'm not saying this to make you feel guilty. I'm saying it so you know you can reclaim your nervous system if you stop letting it be controlled by the thing in your pocket. Your phone is not the enemy. But if you don't reset your usage, it will become the command center of your biology, and it will steer you away from everything you once set out to build. So tomorrow morning, instead of opening your phone, first open your brain. Open it by walking 10 minutes in the sunlight. Write down what you need to do. Sit quietly for 15 minutes with one single goal. Let your nervous system remember what focus feels like, the very thing this world is trying to take from you, one notification at a time. And if you still want to live a life of depth, begin with the simplest act. Put down your phone and do what truly matters. Most communication mistakes, impulsive decisions, and destructive reactions happen when you let your nervous system act before your brain has a chance to process. And in that very moment, what you lose isn't reason, you lose self-control, because a reflex is the result of an unregulated chain reaction. A stimulus from the environment triggers the amygdala, the emotional and alert center of the brain, which then leads to immediate reactions in the form of words, actions, gestures that you'll regret later. Throughout that process, the rational part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, is never consulted. Worse, It's temporarily silenced under emotional pressure. You don't fail to control yourself because you lack reason. You lose control because you haven't developed the skill to pull yourself out of the reflex loop. And that skill, very practically, begins with taking a deep breath. Deep breathing is not a trick to relieve stress. It's a biological action that slows the heart rate, activates the parasympathetic nervous system, and instantly reduces stress signals from the amygdala. In other words, deep breathing is how you bring your brain back to the control panel before letting emotion take the wheel. One proper deep breath, specifically inhaling slowly through the nose for 4 seconds, holding for 2 seconds, and exhaling slowly through the mouth for 6 seconds, has been shown to reduce emotional cortex activity in just 2 to 3 cycles. It won't solve the situation, but it will return you to a physiological state in which you can choose a response instead of a reaction. And that choice, even just a few seconds apart, can be the boundary between preserving a relationship, safeguarding a decision, or simply protecting your self-respect. Have you ever snapped back at someone with words you later regretted? Replied to an email in anger? Slammed a door or shouted in the heat of an argument? Don't blame your emotions. Your nervous system isn't wrong for reacting that way. It's just doing what it's been trained to do. But you're no longer living in the wild under threat from predators. You're living in a world where calm is a biological advantage. And if you don't train yourself to exit the reflex loop, you will always be a prisoner of circumstance. I'm not asking you to suppress emotion. I'm asking you to learn how to create space between emotion and behavior. That space, even just 5 seconds, is enough for the prefrontal cortex to step in, enough for you to realize, I'm being triggered, but I can choose. At that moment, you step out of the role of emotional victim and become the one steering your neurological response. That is where personal power is formed, not through stubbornness, but through presence and timely regulation. This isn't easy because reflexes are fast, deliberate responses are slow, but you can train it. How? By stopping for 5 seconds whenever you feel angry, irritated, or upset, doing nothing, just taking a deep, slow breath. That small, almost invisible act will be your strongest weapon because you're teaching your nervous system nothing is urgent. And when the body believes that, your intellect will have room to work. You can't change the world, can't control others, can't ensure everyone treats you kindly, but you can choose how you respond. And every time you choose to respond well, whether through silence, a calm but clear statement, or simply by doing nothing, you strengthen a new neural network, one of stability, long-term thinking, and self-respect. Biologically speaking, you're building internal neural resilience, the ability to remain physiologically steady even in adversity. I know you've been hurt, been insulted, pushed to your limit, but precisely because of that, you need to master your responses. Not because others deserve your kindness, but because you deserve your own internal stability. Deep breathing isn't an act of forgiving others. It's an act of not betraying yourself. Observe those who truly command respect, leaders, educators, wise advisors. They don't react instantly. They observe, they breathe, they slow down. It's that slowness that makes others feel safe. And your nervous system reacts the same way. The more you maintain a gap between stimulus and action, the more you become someone your own system can trust. And from that trust, you begin to form a new identity, someone who cannot be pulled by anyone, anything, or any fleeting emotion. I want you to remember this. Quick reactions are not power. Selective responses are. And selectivity only happens when there is time. Time only appears when you breathe. And breathing is the one thing you can control even when everything else is chaotic. So train this skill like you train your intellect. Breathe correctly and breathe the moment you're about to do something impulsive. Neurological maturity doesn't come from how many books you've read or podcasts you've listened to. It comes from the moment you are about to explode, but chose to breathe. About to say something hurtful, but chose silence. about to act recklessly but chose observation, every time you do that, you're not just overcoming a situation, you're rewriting the reflex map of your entire nervous system. And one day you'll be surprised, why don't I get carried away by emotions like I used to? The answer will be crystal clear, because you've trained the pause. And in that pause, all transformation begins, not through force, but with one deep breath. You choose to become someone you can trust. No one can do that for you, but the moment you begin with just one breath, you're rewriting your very nature from reflex to self-mastery. And that's enough to change your entire life. Your brain doesn't need entertainment, it needs recovery. And the way you end your day will determine the quality of your entire nervous system throughout the night. But most people, including perhaps you, are choosing to numb the mind in the evening rather than restore it. You call it relaxing, scrolling online, watching shows, listening to podcasts, endlessly swiping through platforms designed to keep you awake. But biologically, all of those behaviors activate the sympathetic nervous system, the system of reaction, alertness, energy burn, which means when you think you're de-stressing, you're actually extending a low-grade stress state and gradually dulling your brain's capacity to process information. When the light from screens hits your retina at night, it signals the suprachiasmatic nucleus, SCN, in the brain that it's still daytime. The consequence, melatonin, the hormone that regulates sleep, is suppressed. Your circadian rhythm is disrupted. You might think, but I still sleep 6-7 hours, right? Yet the quality of your sleep is deteriorating without you realizing. The brain isn't entering enough deep, slow wave stages. The nervous system isn't being cleared of waste. The prefrontal cortex, your center of rational thought, self-control, and decision-making, isn't being rebuilt. The next morning you wake up feeling heavy, tired, without knowing why, and assume you just need a cup of coffee. In truth, you need a radical change in how you close a day. If you want a healthy nervous system, a clear mind, and steady composure, it doesn't begin at 5 a.m. It begins with how you end things at 10 p.m. And you have two choices: continue to numb your nervous system through passive consumption, or build lasting neural strength by feeding the mind what it actually needs: silence, warm amber light, profound insights, emotional processing, and self-reflection. You don't have to do it all, but you must stop training your brain to passively receive shallow, sensational, addictive content, because it is gradually restructuring the regions responsible for focus and decisiveness. Start with one simple rule: no screens 45 minutes before bed. Replace them with reading, but read deeply, slowly, thoughtfully. Books that help you reflect, ask questions, expand your thinking. Because you're not just absorbing knowledge, you're resetting brain waves from beta, active, alert, to alpha, calm, receptive, progressing into theta and delta during deep sleep. Every sentence is a cue guiding your nervous system back into regulation. Every minute you invest in quietude is a minute of renewal for your entire being. Neuroscience calls this the pre-sleep transition, a period that directly affects your brain's recovery quality. This isn't just self-help advice, it's basic physiology. If you continue unconscious consumption every night, you'll slowly lose your ability to focus, think critically, and feel deeply. But if you intentionally use your evenings to feed your spirit, you'll notice a dramatic shift after just a few weeks. You become calmer, firmer, more mentally clear, and that change will ripple across every part of your life. Your nighttime behavior is a reflection of your inner world. If you need noise to soothe yourself, perhaps there's too much chaos inside. If you rely on addictive content to forget, perhaps you haven't faced the emptiness within long enough. But if you dare to sit with yourself, even just 15 minutes each night, no phone, no social media, just a notebook or a meaningful book, you're telling your mind, I'm ready to face myself. I don't need to run. And that alone rewires your entire nervous foundation, not through therapy, but through consistent action. I'm not dragging you back into the old culture of forcing yourself to read every night. I'm helping you realize this. Every big decision tomorrow begins with a very small choice tonight. A brain dulled by cheap dopamine every night cannot handle major goals the next morning. You don't need perfection, but you need intention. You need to ask again, what am I consuming? What is my mind being fed? Is what I'm taking in making me wiser or just less bored? Tonight, before you instinctively open a familiar app, pause for 5 seconds. Ask yourself, can I choose to nourish my brain instead of numbing it for just 30 minutes before sleep? Your answer, yes or no, will reflect the level of self-respect you hold, because no one else lives with you in the night, just your nervous system and the habits you choose. And truly strong people, genuinely strong, don't begin their day with motivation. They begin it with proper restoration the night before. You can change this starting today. No magic required. Just set one clear boundary. I do not permit myself to go numb each night. I will nourish my mind because I need a clear intellect to lead my path. A mind constantly stimulated loses its ability to distinguish what's profound. But a mind trained to rest properly becomes an unshakable foundation. And that does not come from genius creativity. It comes from how you end a day, alert, intentional, and deeply respectful of your own self. No one owes you anything. And if you feel uncomfortable hearing that, it's a sign that you're holding on to a distorted expectation of the world. The truth isn't bitter. It simply demands that you be mature enough to take responsibility for your life without blaming others, without expecting someone to carry the burden, without needing an apology from the past. Once you truly understand that no one owes you a thank you, an opportunity, recognition, or support, you are liberated. It is the purest form of mental freedom a person can attain, to be entirely powered by intrinsic motivation, not dependent on others to feel worthy. Your brain is wired to seek fairness. The prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for moral reasoning and justice, always wants things to feel deserved. But life doesn't care about what's deserved. It only responds by one law: behavior result. If you're waiting for others to act right, if you believe people should be kind, society should be fair, then you're imposing your own moral model on a reality that has no obligation to comply. And it is that gap between expectation and reality that creates persistent suffering within you. The truth is this: no one has a duty to understand you, support you, love you, choose you, or believe in you unless you act in a way that makes that outcome undeniable. And if you still cling to the belief that good people will be rewarded, then you're stuck in a mythological model, not a neurological or sociological one. The brain's reward system doesn't operate based on morality. It runs on behavior and repetition. Those who understand this don't waste time complaining about others. They optimize themselves until their value forces the world to respond. When you let go of the belief that someone will come to save you, you begin to construct your own internal system of coordination. And this system doesn't operate based on emotions. It runs on data. What works? What doesn't? What patterns are producing unwanted results? What needs to end today so I can move forward without repeating mistakes? These questions are uncomfortable, but if you brave enough to answer them, you'll never return to the state of blaming the world again. The world is not fair, and that's good news, because if the world were truly fair, you'd be locked into your starting point with no opportunity to break through. But because the world is unfair, you can rise through effort, through discipline, through deeper understanding, longer vision, earlier action. You don't need anyone to hand you an opportunity. You can create it as long as you stop waiting and stop thinking someone owes you anything. Do you know which emotion drains the most energy from your nervous system? It's not anger. It's resentment. Every time you think they should have understood me, I helped them, why didn't they return the favor? My effort should have been acknowledged. You are continuously activating the excitation loop between the prefrontal cortex, the amygdala, and hypothalamus. This chain sustains a low-grade stress state. It leaves you exhausted, unfocused, and generates a victim-based thinking pattern And the most dangerous part, the more you repeat it, the more it becomes a default structure in your brain. You gradually become someone who always feels deprived, wronged, rejected, even when no one has actually done anything to you. To break free from this, you must do something that isn't easy. Sever your expectations, not because you're pessimistic, but because you want freedom. You want to reclaim your own navigation system from the hands of others. You no longer need praise to continue. You don't need recognition for motivation. You don't need someone's presence to feel valuable. You exist, strive, and grow for one reason only, because you choose to live that way. And when you move from that place, all responses from the world become merely information, not identity. I'm not saying you should become cold or unfeeling. I'm pointing you toward a form of awareness. Your emotions may still arise, but you don't need to cling to them. You can feel hurt without demanding compensation. You can be disappointed without needing someone to make it right. You heal yourself. You move on. You prove yourself. That's not isolation. That is neurological independence. And those who reach that state carry a strange magnetism. They ask nothing of others, yet receive a great deal because others sense their inner power and self-reliance. From today, try changing one small pattern in your brain. Whenever you catch yourself waiting for someone to change, respond, or apologize, interrupt that loop with a proactive behavior. Do a good deed. Write a plan. Finish a task you've been avoiding. Each time you do that, you are reprogramming your nervous system to stop reacting by old default patterns. You don't need to control others. You only need to control how you choose to move forward, regardless of what just happened. True freedom doesn't come from finally being acknowledged. It comes from the moment you no longer need to be acknowledged. You know who you are, you know where you're going, and you do not let anyone define that path by their presence or their absence. No one owes you anything, but you owe yourself a life not constrained by expectation, and you can begin that right now. Discipline is not a behavior, it is a promise. And that promise is written by neurons, reinforced by dopamine, and measured by every time you keep a commitment to yourself when no one is watching. Every morning you wake up on time, every time you work even when you don't feel like it, every time you resist temptation and follow through with what you planned, you are sending one message to your nervous system: I am someone I can trust. And that is the first foundation of self-respect. The prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for executive functions, decision-making, and behavior regulation, is formed through training. It is not an innate ability, but a capacity that can be developed. Every time you procrastinate, you teach your brain that emotions matter more than commitment. But every time you act according to your commitment, despite your emotions, you are retraining your impulse control system. After enough repetitions, discipline is no longer something you force. It becomes a biological reflex. Emotions are data. They are not commanders. If you let emotions lead, you will never maintain any behavior of depth because all emotions fluctuate. But discipline, if built correctly, can become a fixed track that keeps you going through the worst days. You don't need to feel excited. You just need to keep going. Each day you perform a behavior aligned with your commitment. Regardless of your mood, you are reprogramming your brain's reward circuitry, allowing dopamine to come not only from the outcome, but from the act of doing itself. You don't lack motivation. You lack a mechanism for keeping promises. Let me emphasize this. Your brain has a default mechanism to avoid pain and seek pleasure. Discipline is the intentional act of doing the hard thing, even knowing it won't feel good, because you've chosen a goal more important than temporary comfort. And the miracle is this: those very actions are what build the deepest neurological capacity. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire, does not occur when you feel good. It occurs when you face discomfort and keep going anyway, You might say, I'll start when I feel inspired. But inspiration doesn't arise spontaneously. It's a byproduct of disciplined action. When you begin, even in the worst mood, you send a signal to your brain, I am a person who takes action. And just minutes later, dopamine begins to release. The inspiration you are waiting for will arrive, but only if you don't wait. It only comes once you've proven you no longer rely on emotion to do what's right. Discipline is the highest form of self-respect because you cannot truly trust yourself if you keep breaking promises to yourself. Every time you plan but fail to execute, a part of you loses faith in your own word. And no matter how clever your rationalizations may be, your nervous system remembers. It logs every time you procrastinate, break promises, and self-forgive without self-correction. And over time, you stop daring to dream big, not because you lack ability, but because you no longer believe you can keep your own word. To break this cycle, you don't need massive motivation. You just need one single behavior. Keep one small promise every day. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't need to be glamorous. Just pick one thing you said you would do and do it. Repeat, record, reinforce. That is how you build a new reward system in the brain. And when your nervous system begins to recognize keeping promises as a source of dopamine, just like scrolling or eating sweets, you have already won from within. You've wondered why some people maintain good habits for years while others fail after a few weeks? The difference doesn't lie in willpower. It lies in the alignment between belief and behavior. Highly disciplined people aren't always energetic. They are the ones who have proven to themselves through hundreds of small kept promises that they are reliable. And that belief creates a stable inner state, unshaken by weather, mood, or circumstance. If you want to start again, begin with the smallest step. Set an alarm for 6 a.m. and wake up on time. Write down 3 things you will do today and complete them. Eat one healthy meal. Turn off the screen at 10 p.m. Each of these actions is a brick in rebuilding your identity. And you don't need to tell anyone. The silence helps your brain focus on internal power rather than external validation. Discipline does not kill freedom. It is the only foundation of freedom. Because when you have discipline, you are no longer dragged by emotions, temptations, or circumstances. You choose what you will do. You don't wait for someone to hand you ideal conditions. You create those conditions through consistent behavior. And in today's noisy world, a person who can act rightly every day, despite the noise, is someone with superior neurological advantage. From today, stop asking, how do I find motivation? Ask instead, what promise will I keep to myself today? Because no one can live your life for you. No one can keep your promises, and no one can take away your inner strength once you choose to live as someone with discipline. Each day you keep a promise, you move closer to becoming your unbreakable version. You are not lacking anything. You're just looking in the wrong direction. Everything you're searching for, respect, love, recognition, peace, success, doesn't come from chasing others or from the external world. It begins with you, not as an empty slogan, but as a specific neurological mechanism. Your brain is designed to mirror what you repeatedly reinforce internally, and the world in many aspects is merely a reflection of that inner signal. Your nervous system doesn't distinguish between real and imagined. If you believe you are weak, inadequate, or unworthy, the brain will adjust your behavior, facial expressions, posture, and even biological rhythms to align with that belief. It will shrink your voice, hunch your shoulders, avert your gaze, and cause you to act in permission-seeking, hesitant ways. Then you'll say, see, I have no value. But in truth, you triggered that loop by constantly repeating a false signal. You become the product of what you believe about yourself, not because of fate, but because of neurological feedback. The right question isn't how do I get others to respect me? It's what form of respect have I shown myself today? When you stand tall, speak clearly, act with standards, keep promises to yourself, and avoid doing things that make you feel ashamed, you're sending a clear message to your brain, I have value. And the nervous system will amplify that by activating reward circuits, increasing prefrontal cortex activity, and reducing anxiety responses from the amygdala. You don't need external validation. You're rewriting your internal structure of self-perception. The irony is, the more you seek love externally without inner strength, the more you lose yourself. Because when you rely on others' approval to exist, you become a moldable version, and the world does not respect what is easily manipulated. Everything sustainable must start from within. No one can love you more deeply than you love yourself. No one can see value in you unless you've dared to see it first. You are the starting point of every relationship, every development, every achievement, and if you overlook that, you'll stay off course forever. The brain's selective attention system, called the reticular activating system, only lets you notice signals that match your dominant beliefs. If you believe you're a failure, you'll only see evidence of failure. Even success will be dismissed as luck. But if you believe you can own your life, every small detail, an opportunity, a comment, a necessary failure will be interpreted as a sign to move forward. Inner belief is not a philosophy, it's a navigational algorithm. You may have thought everything would change when you gain recognition, fame, or when others understand you, but you'll always feel something missing if you haven't truly been present with yourself. You'll feel lonely in a crowd. You'll feel there's never enough love, praise, or success because nothing external can fill an internal void you've never confronted. As long as you run from yourself, you'll feel lost no matter where you are, what you do, or how much you achieve. Beginning with yourself doesn't mean being selfish. It means having the courage to sit down and ask, what am I doing that's hurting myself? Am I living in alignment with the values I respect? Am I treating myself like someone I truly care about? And if the answer is no, then you know where to begin. Not with changing the world, but with no longer underestimating yourself, with doing each small thing with dignity, with withdrawing attention from what distracts and redirecting it inward. You don't need to search any further. You need to return. Everything you think is out there is actually waiting to be awakened from within you. Decisiveness, confidence, calm, clarity, magnetism, all of these can be trained, cultivated, and built. If you stop waiting for someone to deliver them, you are the one assigned to this task, no one else. Not yesterday, not some perfect version of yourself in the future, but you, right here with all your imperfections, but clear-minded enough to begin. You did not come into this world to beg for love or recognition. You came to express the most complete version of yourself. And when you do that from the deepest part of your being, the world will rearrange itself automatically, not because you force it, but because you've changed the signal you emit. You've become a source of attraction, a significant presence, someone the world cannot overlook, not because you try to be important, but because you've chosen to live as though you are a worthy. Everything you are searching for begins with you, and you can begin in this very moment with one small but meaningful act, respecting yourself. Because when you change where you start, you change the entire journey. And when you move from within, the outside world no longer holds the power to control you.